welcome to Money Matters TV. I'm your host, Doug Hepburn of Hepburn Financial Advisors in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. We're a boutique wealth management firm working with successful families and business owners for over 20 years. I'd like to welcome my co-host today, Brad Mills of Scheer Partners. Brad,
how are you?
Tell me something new in your world.
Well, I joined Scheer Partners. It's a boutique commercial real estate development and brokerage firm headquartered in Rockville, Maryland. We also have offices in Frederick, Maryland, Philadelphia, and I'm opening one in central Pennsylvania. So our focuses are on the life sciences and industrial space.
Fantastic. I can only imagine in central Pennsylvania, there's probably a lot of warehouse space that's in your market, and that's got to be an interesting part of what you're going to be doing.
You're right. There's a big demand ever since COVID. There's been demand for more deliveries, home deliveries of retail goods. Obviously, we're in the Northeast corridor. You have a great interstate highway system, including Interstate 81, 83, the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and Interstate 80, all feeding up into New York and New England. So there's a lot of demand for space in this area for sure.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'm sure that I know just from reading the news that logistics companies have been expanding significantly, in particular in the Lehigh Valley, as well as out in where you're located around Mechanicsburg, just because of that infrastructure. Do you see a lot of growth in that last mile? Because I mean the long haul trucking has been established for a long time, but nowadays we see Amazon trucks everywhere, and even other like private label companies that are doing that last mile delivery. Do you see that expanding a lot?
It's a great question, Doug. It's already started. So a lot of the bigger spaces, the million square foot behemoths, so to speak, demand has slowed down probably for that size of space. You are seeing people looking more at what we call infill locations. So in the older industrial areas closer to the cities. And yes, those are for that last mile distribution. So we've seen a lot of redevelopment of older properties that were considered obsolete or obsolescent in the last, say, 3 or 4 years. And I think that trend's going to continue.
That would make a lot of sense. I know I've seen articles about, some of these old industrial properties, in particular in Philadelphia, that are actually commanding higher prices than or competitive prices to what multifamily pricing was per square foot, just because these companies want to be able to locate finished goods in a neighborhood so that they can get it distributed same day delivery like Amazon.
Well, you're exactly right. I was just at a seminar at which the speaker was the logistics manager for a large manufacturing company. They make basically electrical equipment. And he said that he thought the days of the giant distribution center have sort of peaked, and that in their network, for sure, they're going to do the sorts of things you talked about, having that sort of a hub and spoke system where the smaller warehouses come into play for local delivery. Another interesting thing he said was that when he looked at his relocating his warehouse from the south up into the northeast, he had labor costs, obviously construction and land costs, but also personnel costs, and labor's personnel, excuse me, and travel costs. And his transportation was costing him $2 a mile. So he said that clearly it made economic sense to relocate from the south to the northeast, even though it cost more for the land and construction and the employees, because he was saving so much on transportation to these major population centers.
Wow.
So I think a lot of other people are doing that calculus. And if you can have fewer miles on the road overall, because you do have that sort of last mile distribution system, I think you're doing the right thing for your company.
That's interesting. And it opens up a whole new question I guess, people have been relying on some of these companies that have pioneered the, same day delivery and a lot of the last mile stuff. But what we found is that with some of the larger companies that dominate that market, if they like your product too much, they'll start uh, manufacturing it themselves or through a contract manufacturer so that they can keep it in stock and cut out who their original vendor was. So it
Sure.
seems like, in the example you just stated, that a lot of companies, then instead of working with a partner to try and distribute their products, they may actually end up self-distributing.
Well, yeah, and that's a decision that companies have to make. You have to decide what your focus is and what your specialty is. And so in the last, say, 20 years, we've seen a big rise in what are called third-party logistics companies, or 3PLs. So these are the companies that just do distribution for a living. So they will operate your warehouse. Let's say you are a manufacturer of electrical goods. You know how to make the goods. You know how to do the R&D and so on. You're going to let the expert do your distribution. So that is physical. That could be physical distribution to your resellers, your distributors, and it could entail delivering to retail stores. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that, but the physical distribution can be left with those companies. So again, every company has to make the decision as to what they feel is most important for them. But I think a lot of companies have decided they're going to stick to their corporate knitting and let another company actually do the physical hauling for them.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense depending on what states you're doing business in, because as soon as you locate either property or personnel in a particular state, now you've created nexus and you're subject to tax in that state.
Yes.
And a lot of companies don't want to do that. Now, there may be benefits to doing that depending on what states you locate in and what their tax rate is. But certainly, nexus is something that we in the Northeast have become very accustomed to, in particular with New Jersey right across the river. Hey, I wanted to ask you a question that comes from a viewer. Chad Wellman of Philadelphia asked, what is CAM in commercial real estate area?
Well, that's a big question. Thanks, Chad, for the question. CAM stands for Common Area Maintenance. So in its broadest sense, it's everything that a landlord spends to maintain a property that is not specifically the part of the tenant or the condo owner, depending on the legal situation. So if you're in an office building, the common area would be everything that's not within your space. So it's hallways, restrooms, lobbies, elevators, and then outside, the sidewalks and parking lots. And furthermore, if the office or the warehouse building is part of a larger park, there's typically maintenance to the rest of the park. So that could be lighting, it could be roadways, depending on whether the roads are publicly dedicated or not. Any fencing or security systems or anything like that that's considered common. So the landlord will put together a list of charges, give you an estimate during the year of what it's going to cost you, typically stated in a per square foot amount, and that'll be added to your base rent. At the end of the year, the landlord then tots up what the actual costs are, and typically around March or April, we'll get every tenant a statement saying, okay, we thought your common area maintenance costs were $3 a square foot. Turns out it snowed a lot, so they're $4 a square foot. And so depending on the structure of your lease, you would either you would probably get an increase that year to catch up, so to speak, or it might be that the costs were lower and then the landlord refunds them to you either in the form of a check or reduced rent. One of the key things to remember are it's important to be able to review the landlord's books to make sure that they're on the up and up.
Yep.
And also, depending on your size as a tenant, you can negotiate the right that the contract be bid to third parties, that there would be multiple bids and so on. You have the right to audit that as well. So
fascinating.
Yeah,
that's fascinating stuff.
And with inflation, typically, you estimate what your rent's going to be, and then a smart tenant will ask the landlord to give them, say, a history of operating expenses. What's
Right.
your history to see if they've been in any spikes or so on. I could go on and on about this topic, Doug, but it is one that can be costly for the unwary.
Well, you know what? I think you did a great job answering that. Chad, thank you very much for sending that in. Great question. If you'd like to have your questions answered by Money Matters TV, here's how you can do that.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
In the last year, we've heard a lot about advances in technology and in particular, artificial intelligence and how that's going to impact our world going forward on many different levels. To help us make more sense of that, we've got our guest today. We're joined by Paul Mladjenovic of Prosperity Network and the author of AI Investing for Dummies. Paul, welcome to Money Matters TV.
Oh, pleasure to be on. Thank you for having me.
Can you provide an overview of how artificial intelligence is transforming the landscape of investing?
Well, artificial intelligence as a technological innovation is not that different, actually, from a lot of other major milestones in the past, like the internet and the advent of the computer, et cetera. So this is something that is definitely a major movement. It'll have an impact on every major aspect of the economy and people's lives, professional and otherwise. So I do feel that people should focus in on it and learn ways to embrace it so that they can benefit themselves, their careers, their professions, and their livelihood going forward.
Paul, would you say that AI is a short-term development, or is this a major trend to be aware of?
Yeah, well, it's not a fad or short-term development. It has very far-reaching consequences, and it is definitely a major development. Much like, the internet was a trend, and other aspects were a trend. This is definitely a major mega trend. It will impact in large ways many different aspects out there. So the sooner the people get a chance to learn about it and embrace it, the better off they will be, both for their investments and in other areas of their lives, both as a consumer and as a professional.
Thanks.
Interesting. Now, Paul, you mentioned that you're used to be a CFP in a past life, and you've been an author for a number of years. How can investors use artificial intelligence to make better investing decisions?
Well, thank you for kindly. By the way, and right now, my current status is a CFP board emeritus. You earned that after doing CFP work for 36 years. So thank you for mentioning that. Now, in terms of how what people should learn about this, first of all, a lot of the main activity of AI for investors is done by a lot of the common names you've heard about, NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, and others going forward. So that is going to continue to make high tech, a major player in the economy and something that many growth-oriented investors should include in their overall portfolios. Now, for a lot of investors out there, the great thing about developments for people who are more, nervous, about the technology is the great thing is that there are over a dozen major AI-related ETFs out there that can easily be incorporated into any portfolio, even the most conservative of investors. Okay, so large cap stocks, great for a long-term investing growth. ETFs, people who are more conservative or safety oriented. And for people who are more speculative on one more, go growth, there are plenty of small cap possibilities out there, but even they have ETFs that cover that. So there's opportunities for many folks. That's the first level, by the way. The second level is that AI will benefit others that are not AI focused. For example, healthcare, for instance, has been very data intensive for many years, in fact, decades. So AI will help the healthcare sector reduce costs, improve profits, and so many investors can find some great long-term investment opportunities in healthcare because of the cost-cutting capabilities of AI. Now, that's the positive side. The quote-unquote negative side is that AI is very electricity intensive. So for me, I know that for people who are a conservative or retirement oriented, utilities tend to play a key part in a lot of their focus. So the thing is this, since AI is so electricity intensive, then that's going to benefit things such as electric utilities. So both directly and indirectly, AI has plenty of opportunities for lots of folks out there.
Well, that is very interesting. Sounds like obviously an important field to focus on. Paul, would you say there are any pitfalls or drawbacks to investing in AI or AI related companies?
Oh, no, absolutely. First of all, AI is still basically in its first phase. There's still more development involved in it. And what I mean by this is that people out there who are going to make life-changing decisions using AI better be extremely careful, because AI still can make mistakes. It still has bias in it because, again, AI just might be the ultimate example of garbage in and garbage out, because AI, a lot of the data that it relies on is a pool of many human beings out there who make up this extensive database that AI utilizes. So for AI, even myself, when I was doing the book AI Investing for Dummies, I asked AI a batch of questions, and I did notice, errors. So AI is great for research, great for a second opinion, but do not rely 100% on it, because there still are errors and there still is bias. And if it's a life-changing decision for you, personal-oriented, health, financial, or whatever, then seek multiple, opinions on this, including human input.
Thanks.
That's it's interesting that you mentioned that. I can remember that old term "garbage in equals garbage out" from my days of doing programming COBOL back in the 80s. When people think about, and we've seen a number of examples of where garbage in, garbage out is happening in headlines lately with AI, but how can investors safely invest in AI? Because I know you talked about, the leading companies that are supporting the infrastructure for it, like the chip companies, and you also mentioned the utility companies, and as well as funds that specialize in this.
No, exactly right. And by the way, I just want people to know that as much as AI is new and far-reaching and innovative and everything else, what I want investors to understand is that the old-time basics are more important than ever. If people remember when they were initially going into internet companies and web companies and .coms in the late 90s and early 2000, 2001, keep in mind the fundamentals were as important now as they've ever been. There were plenty of internet companies that went bankrupt or had made losses because the fundamentals are still necessary. And same thing now. As much as you're going to see AI being very successfully applied in a variety of perspectives, both directly and indirectly, you're going to see AI companies go out of business just as well, because they didn't have the fundamentals. So as you generally have come to know, just because the fundamentals have been around for much longer than we've been alive, they are just as necessary now for sound investments than ever before. If I'm going to be investing in AI, I'm going to still look at the fundamentals of the company. Is it making a profit? Does it have rising sales? Does it have a sound balance sheet? Then those things. And by the way, the interesting thing is that AI will help me do this analysis as well. So the first thing that investors should do is, maybe before they invest directly in AI, is to use an AI tool, such as ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or any one of the robo-advisors that are out there, to start looking at the things that people should always be looking at, the fundamentals. Is this a sound enterprise? Is it doing well now? Does it look like it has prospects for the future? Then I can then be able to put my money on the line. So again, AI is a tool, both in this case as an assistant, as much as it is something to look at directly, for investment opportunities.
I just do a follow-up question on that, because so far we've been hearing about a lot of the linguistics AIs. And I'm not sure the proper term, but like Chat GPT. It's great for a chatbot to be able to answer questions for people, but can they really get in and do the analysis and numbers manipulation that's necessary for fundamental analysis on a balance sheet and income statement for a company that's long term? That can identify trends and issues within a potential investment.
Well, in this case, let me tell you what's important here, because one thing that we're going to see, and I was expecting this to happen even as I was writing the book, is that AI tools will be in two basic categories, which is going to be the general, generic, or horizontal, if I can call it. Like GPT is horizontal. In other words, it knows a little bit about everything. So,
right.
So this is where I want to. But for people who are looking for making specific decisions, the second category, like vertical AI tools, they are now unfolding lots of AI tools that specialize in the vertical of investment and finance. I would more likely use those to make investment and financial oriented decisions with the vertical, because I have seen errors with the GPT. It's going to still go through more evolution until it gets it. But for investors, if they're doing this, fine. And by the way, I appreciate you mentioning about the book AI Investing for Dummies. I've told people in the book, I said, look, this is a topic that's changing as I'm writing about it. So I think one of the most valuable things was the appendix, where I showed my favorite tools and databases so they can find the specifics. Because as AI tools that are vertical, that specialize in investing and financial matters, those will be much more valuable, and much more reliable than what we've seen with the generic things like ChatGPT. So thank you.
That's all very interesting. So Paul, you mentioned healthcare as an area where companies, organizations are going to see big cost savings. What other industries and sectors do you think are going to benefit from AI besides tech and obviously healthcare, which you just mentioned?
Well, the first thing you think of is data intensive, industries. Like it will impact finance. And as I mentioned to you gentlemen beforehand, I think that financial advisors will continue to be a valuable part of the consumer's team out there. But one thing you'll end up finding out is that in the financial realm, the AI bots, especially robo-advisors, will lower costs and enhance efficiencies in the finance realm. So the world of finance, for people who want to invest in brokerage firms and et cetera, that's going to be worthwhile there. Manufacturing, when like Amazon, for example, and other retailers, since they're more data intensive, that's going to lower their cost as well, and that's going to be able to enhance operations for many of the retail firms that are out there. And then the other side is, I mentioned earlier that there was the negative side where investors can find opportunities. And what do I mean by that? Well, AI. Now, I told you one of the things that AI has is the fact that it's electricity intensive. So there are opportunities in electricity, like utilities and such, to benefit indirectly from AI. But the second thing is, because AI, as you come to know, whenever there's new area, there's new areas for risk and theft and fraud. So AI, believe it or not, is going to be used as a counteroffensive in things like cybersecurity, et cetera. So those will be also an investment opportunity for forward-looking investors.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
To sort of go back on some of the things that you'd mentioned, the different industries that are going to be impacted. I know you talked about healthcare. You also talked about the utility industry. We're seeing such demand increases on the utility industry between the need for electric cars. Power consumption's gone up because everybody's got multiple computers in their house. Now we're seeing that, with the explosion of AI, data centers have become very, very energy intensive. And one of the big bottlenecks there is getting sustainable power to those data centers that's going to be 99.99999 Six Sigma on all the time. And so I guess the real question I have is, are these utilities really geared up to be able to supply that much energy?
Well, this is where some traditional sources are going to be important. Like for me, part of my long-term approach has been commodities. And I do think that no matter how much society from a top-down perspective is trying to wean us off of the hydrocarbons, such as natural gas, et cetera, there'll still be opportunities here for that because we'll need this to power AI and so much more that we need in this new age.
Fantastic. Well, Paul, this has been very informative. I really appreciate your insights on artificial intelligence, and it's been extremely. You're a knowledgeable guy, and I think you've uncovered a lot of great stuff for our viewers today. So thank you for joining us, Brad. Thanks for co-hosting today. You did a great job, and I'd like to mention our next guest is going to be, tune in to our next show with Eric Parnell of Great Valley Advisors. In the meantime, most importantly, we want to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in to Money Matters Today TV, where your money matters.